Hey, my name is Cedric from Vertex Marketing Agency, and in this video, I'm going to talk about Google Tag Manager. So we're really going to cover the basics in this video. So if you're just getting started with the tool, or maybe you've heard some of your colleagues talking about Google Tag Manager and you just want to familiarize yourself, well, this video is for you. And even if you're not in charge of setting up Google Tag Manager for your organization and you're just, let's say, overseeing the marketing, I still recommend that you watch this video because you need to know what is possible with Google Tag Manager and what is not. And let's say that you're actually seeing that some of your data inside Facebook is off, or maybe it's inside Google Analytics 4. Well, with you understanding, how your setup is currently configured and what is a tag, what is a trigger, and what is a variable, which we'll cover in this video, you could potentially diagnose or troubleshoot an issue that you might have inside your setup, because websites do changes, right? So you probably change page URL, you change buttons on your website, and when you make those sorts of changes, it could potentially break your tracking setup. So by, again, understanding the basics of the tool and how it works, you could potentially prevent this issue or be able to troubleshoot it and diagnose it early on instead of later. So that's exactly what we're going to cover in this video. So let's actually jump in. Okay, so I am in my Google Tag Manager account, and if you haven't created one yet, you can actually just go to tagmanager.google.com and you should actually see something like this. And it's going to ask you to give it a container name, which could be your website URL, and to choose a target platform. Now, in this video, we're only going to cover the web because this is Google Tag Manager basics, and the other ones are a little bit more advanced. So again, we're only covering the web, but fill out this information, you can hit create, and congrats, you have a Google Tag Manager account, and it is completely free. Now, if I just go back to my workspace, I actually want to talk about what is Google Tag Manager and why would you even use Google Tag Manager? Because if you're just getting started with the tool, I definitely understand why you would have those questions. So let's actually take Facebook and Google Analytics as an example. So if you've been advertising on Facebook, you probably know about the Facebook pixel, and it's a piece of JavaScript code that you need to add to your website. Same thing with Google Analytics. They have a piece of JavaScript code that you need to add to your website so that you can actually track users inside their platform. Well, if you were to not use Google Tag Manager, you would need to, and that's probably the way you have it set up right now, and you need to add all these different tracking codes to your website and to the code, which is fine. It isn't so bad, but what about when you have Facebook, Google Analytics, and you have Pinterest, and then potentially LinkedIn, maybe Google Ads? So you're gonna eventually end up with a lot of different tracking codes for a bunch of different platforms that is just like sending the data back to these third parties. And that is fine, but if you were to add all the different code inside your website, there would be a lot of JavaScript code. So a great solution for that is to use something called Google Tag Manager. And the way it works is that you insert this piece of code once on your website, and instead of always like going inside your website to make changes or to create new events or to change the code, you can just simply go here under tags and either modify the current tag that you had or create a new one. So let me actually just talk about tag, and everything's going to make a little bit more sense. So if I open this up, there's already a bunch of pre-made template that you can use. So let's say you want to send a page view event to Google Analytics 4. All you have to do is put in the measurement ID, which you get when you create your account. And then right below is your trigger. And what a trigger is when this condition is true, go ahead and do this action. And the action in this example would be to send a page view event to Google Analytics 4. So if ever you've used something like Zapier, you're probably familiar with triggers, and it's just like when this condition is true, then do this. And it could be anything. It could be when someone's, let's say, views a page on any page, go ahead and just send a page view event to Google Analytics 4. Whenever someone visits the purchase page, right, the thank you page on the website, then go ahead and send a purchase event to Google Analytics 4. So that's kind of like how it works. So that would be your tags, and that would be your trigger. And then we also have something called variables. So I'm going to take actually the purchase example. So let's say that we want to send a purchase event. So, it would just be like this. So purchase, and then as part of that event, we actually want to also add the value, because inside Google Analytics 4, I want to see what is the average order value, for example. So I can actually just type value here. And for the value of the value, sorry if it's a bit confusing, this is where I would want to use a variable, because if someone buys this product product and in another one, which we have 2 products in our cart now, the value is going to be different than someone just buying 1 product. And even if you're only selling 1 single product on your website, I still recommend to use a variable for this because someone could buy more than 1, right? So this is when and why a variable is really useful. So then we would go ahead and create a variable that contains a value. Now, in terms of variables, you can actually create variables with custom JavaScript. You can pull the variables directly from like what we call a data layer. You might know what JavaScript is, but then data layer, if you're new to Google Tag Manager, probably what is that? And it's a little bit more advanced, but I think it's good for you to kind of like familiarize yourself with that concept because it's honestly used really often inside Google Tag Manager. But a variable is like just a variable inside like a Google Sheet. It's a value that can potentially change, and it's not just like a static value, right? Because a static value would they say, hey, I'm gonna put 40 and every time someone makes a purchase, it's 40. But that's usually not the best way to analyze or track your data because that's just false. The value is not always going to be 40. So this is when something like a variable can be really useful. So going back here, we have tags again, triggers, and variables. So tag is what you're sending. Triggers is when this is true, then send my tag. And then a variable could be something like the value, which again can potentially change every time someone makes a purchase. So hopefully this paints you a better picture of what is Google Tag Manager and gives you an idea of the user interface and where would you go to do a specific action. But what we're going to do now is I actually have a demo store here, and I'm going to show you how we track things like add to cart and a purchase and send that information to Facebook, because I think that a real example is probably the best way for you to learn how to use and leverage the tool. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up the tag event, and I've already shown you that there's actually pre-built tags that you can use to send the information. So we have Google Analytics 4, we actually have Google Ads, we have Google Optimize, right? So we have lots of different options. So whenever there's actually not a tag for what you're looking to do, most of the time you're actually just gonna use a custom HTML tag, which is, in this example, we could just add the Facebook pixel code here, and that would be responsible for sending the data to Facebook. That is one option. Another option is you could always go here under templates and see if there's potentially a template for Facebook. Now, just keep in mind that this is a Google product, right? Google Tag Manager. So I think this is why they're actually not featuring the Facebook template as part of their pre-built tags here. So what you can actually do for Facebook, if you're setting this up for Facebook, is to go under the tag templates and you're gonna give it a search. And here we can just type Facebook. And this one right here, so Facebook Pixel by Facebook Archive, you can add that to your workspace. So I'm gonna just hit add. And now I've added this tag template. So when we go to templates, you can see that this is a template that you've just added. And now when I go to tags, I hit new, we see it right here. So under custom. So now that is my Facebook Pixel template. Now under Facebook Pixel ID, obviously you wouldn't want to put your specific ID that Facebook gave you when you've created it. So I'm just going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 just for now. And this is where it's going to depend on like what you're trying to do. So in this video, again, we're setting this up for an e-com store and we're using Facebook as an example, right? But if ever it's GA4 that you're trying to use Google Analytics for, then obviously you would pick the GA4 event. But again, this video is more, it's not to show you how to do something specific. It's more to show you how Google Tag Manager works so that you can use that knowledge and apply it to anything that you want to do inside this tool. So I just want to send a page view event for now. And then as my trigger, since it's a page view event, I want to send this on all pages. I can actually just simply click all pages here. And I'm just going to name this FB Basic, and let's remove the capital A and simply save that. Now, I've actually showed you this code earlier, which is exactly how you can add that to your website. Now, I'm not going to take too much time to really show you how to implement this because it's really going to change depending on the platform that you're using. What I would recommend that you do is you look up a YouTube video or just Google it, how to install Google Tag Manager on WordPress, how to install Google Tag Manager on Shopify. And if you're using any of the 2 platforms that I just mentioned, I actually already made videos on how to install it. So I can leave the link in the description of this video. But if you're using something like, I don't know, maybe like Magento or any other thing, just Google it and there's definitely going to be like, you know, a solution for you on how to add that. But if you're using WordPress, I mean, that's what I'm using in this video. So I'm just going to quickly show you how I would do it. Just go and hit on plugin. and you can actually just add a plugin right here. And if you type Google Tag Manager, there's a plugin that you can use, and all you have to do is put in the container ID, which can be found right here. Also, it can be found right here, and then it's going to connect it to your site automatically. So it's pretty simple with WordPress, but like I said, it's honestly really easy to install on any other platform as well. You just might need to do a little bit of research. This right now, we have the page view. Now I'm going to show you how to create something like an add to cart event. So when someone clicks on one of this product, they're going to get to the product page, and in this example, I want to send an add to cart event to Facebook. So the way that I could actually do that with Google Tag Manager is by going here, clicking on triggers, and we're actually going to create a new trigger that's going to be responsible for sending all clicks. So I have it right here, all clicks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit preview right here. And one thing worth noting is that when you're previewing with Google Tag Manager, I strongly recommend that you use their Google Chrome extension, and I can leave that link in the description of this video. And this is honestly a really great Chrome extension for debugging, and by adding that to your view, it's also gonna make sure that when you're previewing a website, it stays in the same window. But if, let's say, you were to not have this Chrome extension, it would actually open up a window like somewhere else on your computer, like in a different like tab. And yeah, it's just like you need to go back and forth for testing and that kind of stuff, and it just like makes your life a little bit harder. So by just having this Chrome extension, you can actually just continue the journey on this specific window. So again, just add that to your Chrome, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this product page right here and paste that inside the website URL input bar here. Now we can see this message here. That means it's connected, and if you're using the Chrome extension, you can like enable it, and then if you reload the page, you should actually see your Google Tag Manager container here. Now you can see I have multiple Google Tag Managers set up on this website, or I've actually installed the same one but in 2 different ways. That's because I've used this demo site for lots of different demos, but you should actually just see your Google Tag Manager set up here. And if I go here, I can actually see that we were able to connect it and it was able to load. And if I actually just click on the page, so I just clicked here, the white space, we actually get a click. All right, and if I click this, so I just click the T here, we get another click. And now if I look on variables, we can actually see the click text, and it says tool. Okay, so that is a variable. So whenever I'm clicking an element, we can get the click text, we can get the click ID, we can get the click URL. One thing that you might want to do is click on variables here and click on configure, and where we see page, make sure those are all selected. And also where it says clicks, I recommend that you select all of them. So if ever you're following along and you're like, oh, that's weird, like I'm not seeing the click ID or the click text, that's probably because you haven't selected all of these. So you just need to go and select them and then go ahead and hit the preview again, and now you should see them. At this point, maybe you're starting to figure out how we're gonna be able to track the add to cart, but if you haven't, no worries, I'm gonna show you how. So I'm gonna click the add to cart button now. So I've just clicked it, and that's click number 15 here. Now it's gonna load another page because it brought me to, it reloaded the page. But we have click 15 here, and that's actually when I click the add to cart button, because right now we want actually to create the trigger. So before I create the tag, I want to create a condition, and when that condition is true, that's what's responsible for sending the information to Facebook in this example. Now there's a few different things that we could potentially use as our trigger. When we see the click classes, it's actually single add to cart. So that's actually potentially something that I'm like, so when the click class is equal to this, could I use potentially that as my trigger? Or when the click text is equal to add to cart, maybe that's what I want to use as my trigger, right? So you just kind of look at that and see kind of like what is unique to what I just did. And one general rule is to try to always use like the click class or the click ID. In this example, there's none, but I recommend to use either one of those if you're going to be using like a click trigger, because the click text is okay. But what about if someone is using Google Translate on your website and it's in French or in a different language? Well, it won't be equal to add to cart. It's going to be equal to the translation, right? So the text won't be exactly equal, meaning your tags will not fire. So that's why with the click class, or let's say the click ID, it doesn't matter which language the user is using, because it's always going to be the same class and ID. So just one thing to keep in mind. And with that being said, I'm actually going to use the click class in this example. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of this. and I'm gonna go under trigger, create a new trigger, and I'm just gonna name this ATC for add to cart. And this is a click, right? So just a regular click and not a link click. And some clicks, and this is where we're using a variable. So when we're saying it's when the click class, so click classes, I could say contains, but we know it's also equal. So let's just use equal. And then here we have the value. And again, this value, I've pulled it up from here. And when this condition is true, that's what we're using to actually send the data to Facebook. And so I can hit save. Now I only have my trigger, so I need to set up the information that gets sent. So again, I'm gonna use Facebook, but you could also set this up for Google Analytics 4. You could use the same trigger for multiple tags, right? You can say when someone adds something to their cart, I want to send an add to cart to Facebook, but I also want to send an add to cart to Google Analytics 4. But again, we're setting this up for Facebook, so I'm just gonna type here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a demo, so obviously put your real pixel ID here if you're following along. Now I'm gonna click the trigger here, and then that's the trigger that we just created, the ATC trigger. So when someone clicks the add to cart, then it's gonna send this tag. Now let me just name this FB ATC for add to cart. Now I can save this, and now we've actually just created a add to cart trigger that sends the information to Facebook. Now let me actually continue on my website here, and I've added to my cart. So I'm just gonna view cart. I'm gonna make a purchase on my demo website. So let me make a purchase and I'll fast forward everything for you. Okay, amazing. So I actually just made a purchase on my demo website. And here what we have to do is we need to find something that is unique to this page that we could use again as our trigger. So you can always use the click. So when I clicked on the button, I think before this page, it was like complete order. So I could potentially use the ID or maybe the class of that button. But let's say someone, I don't know, put in or entered the wrong credit card and they need to do that more than once. Well, that means that they're gonna click that button, let's say twice or 3 times, which could potentially at this point send like 3 purchase event when there was actually only 1 purchase event. So just keep that in mind. But what I usually like to do is I like to send my event when someone visits this page, because that means that they've really made the purchase and yeah, they've paid. So, and then if you're setting this up for like a service-based business and you're tracking leads, it's maybe when they're submitting the contact form, at that point you're redirecting them to a thank you page. So it kind of depends on the way that your website is set up. But yes, ideally the user lands like on a unique thank you page like this example right here. Because I've done this multiple times, I know exactly what is unique to this page that I could use as my trigger, and I can actually find this in the URL. So you can use certain things that are inside the URL to fire your tags. So you could potentially say whenever there's a page view where the page URL contains order received, then we know they're on the thank you page, right? Because that's the only place on my website that if ever the page URL contains order received, well, that means they've actually just made a purchase. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this, go back to Google Tag Manager, and again, I'm creating a new trigger, and this one's for the purchase. I'm just gonna call this purchase. And then that's a page view, but again, we're using a variable. So some page views when the page URL contains, and then this is where we're entering this. So this is actually not really a variable, it's just like a static value, and it's when the page URL contains order received. That's when we know someone just made a purchase. So I'm gonna hit tags, and I can do the same thing here. So go ahead and select Facebook. Let's put 1, 2, 3, 4. My trigger is purchase. And then I can again just name this FB purchase. And when I save that, now I actually have a rule that whenever someone visits a specific page, is send a purchase event to Facebook. And again, you can use that same concept, that same trigger to also send a purchase event to something like Google Analytics 4. So now it's actually time that we test our setup. And that's something you should do every time when you're making changes. Always go and use the preview mode and test and see if what you just did is actually working correctly, because we're all humans, we make mistakes, and I mean, it's something that happens, so it's just important to test it. So I'm just gonna go here and I'm gonna preview my Google Tag Manager. So when I'm hitting preview, I'm actually gonna go directly to this product page actually. Hitting connect, it's gonna connect to my website. So again, when I'm clicking around this page here, we're actually getting clicks here. And In case you forgot, the reason we're actually seeing clicks here, and if you're following along and when you're clicking around and you're not getting clicks, that is because we've added the all clicks trigger here, which is simply whenever someone makes a click, just add that here inside of like our little debug summary. And when someone clicks this, I think we're using the click class, then it should actually send our Facebook event. So I'm gonna click it. Now, that's the last click we made right here. And we see here under tags fired, we have the Facebook add to cart event. So when we go here under container loaded, which we send it to the Facebook page view. But if we actually go right here before that, you can see all your tags here. And depending when you go through the website and you do certain actions, then you might see that the page view is firing, and then you might see that the add to cart is firing. But if ever you're going through the action and you're not seeing, like for example, that last click here, let's say I were to click on that and see that my add to cart did not fire, then that means that I would actually need to go back inside my trigger because I probably made a mistake and just revisit that and retest and see potentially what I've missed. But it is firing, so that's great. So just keep in mind that it's usually not because of the way you've configured the tag. It's usually a problem with the trigger. And the way I can also know that is because I can see here it succeeded. So let's say if it would have said like failed or error, then at this point I know that it fired, but then there is an error with the actual tag. So then I would need to investigate the tag and not the trigger. And it's gonna be the same thing for the purchase. So when I make a purchase, now I'm gonna see the purchase event that's gonna get sent to Facebook. So I actually wanna take a little bit of time to just talk about different triggers and variables, because I feel like if someone is just getting started with Google Tag Manager, that's probably where they need a little bit more help, especially if what I've just showed you in this video doesn't apply to your website. I don't know, for whatever reason you're trying to do something differently. So for whatever reason you're trying to do like a different setup than what I have in my example. So I'm gonna go inside Google Tag Manager and we're just gonna cover like triggers together, and we're gonna look at different, I guess, match and variations. So here you have the page view, and you can say, well, fire this on pages that the click classes contains this, or when the page URL contains that. And that's exactly what we did for the purchase event. If I open this up here, now all the other ones here, I would say don't play with that too much. If you're familiar with custom JavaScript, or if you're familiar with data layer, then you're probably gonna use the DOM ready, and that's something that I like to use sometimes. But again, if you're just getting started as your trigger when someone views a page, go ahead and just use the page view event. Now here, all elements, this is the one that we use for the add to cart. But as you can see, there's lots of different variables that you can use depending on what pre-configured variable you've already enabled. But you can also create your own custom variable. So you can select new variable, and when you create a custom variable, you have lots of different options, and you can even potentially create like your own variable with custom JavaScript. So you could have a variable that says when a user is coming from Facebook ads, because it's looking at, let's say, the UTMs, when the UTM is equal to Facebook_ad, then that's what you want to use to send your tags. So honestly, sky's the limit with variables and tags and triggers. You can really do anything that you want. I'm not going to cover everything because I don't want to overwhelm you. The triggers that you should really know about is the page views, the click, and potentially custom events. So I would say really play with those triggers, but as you can see, there's a lot, and you can even like kind of create your own custom triggers, when you get to that point. But for page view, whenever you want to specify which page, all you have to do is go ahead and select the page URL. And as you can see here, you can actually even create new variables. So this can get a lot more advanced. And if you're interested in learning that kind of stuff, just let me know and I can make another video about that. If you're just getting started, I think like page URL, like click ID, click class, I mean, you can use those variables and triggers to really set up most websites. So I think that's a really good place to start for you. And when I'm opening this up, another one that you want to use potentially are the clicks, which that's the one we've covered for the add to cart. And again, you can use the click classes. You can actually say when the page URL contains, I don't know, a specific value, and also when the click text is equal to, I don't know, add to cart, then that's what actually you would use as your trigger and what would send the information to, let's say, Facebook. So just keep in mind that if you're adding multiple conditions, all these conditions needs to be true, and that's what's gonna send your tag, right? So if one of them, let's say you add 4, like in my example here, and one of them is false, then the trigger wouldn't really fire because one of them is false. So just keep that in mind. This is a great way to add like multiple condition, and when all these are true, then that's what sends your tags. And if we keep scrolling down here, another one that you might want to use is a custom event. Now, I won't show you how to create custom event because that is more advanced. Maybe if you're using like, I don't know, WordPress or Shopify or another platform where when you're inspecting the actual like summary here, you're seeing a custom event. So it could potentially say purchase when you're making a purchase. So some websites will actually have that already configured. It's what we call like a data layer, and it's making a data layer like push. And here in this example, GTM is actually already taking care of that for you. So they're actually sending an event to the data layer and they're calling it GTM.click. Let's say that I wanted to use any click as part of my trigger. I could actually potentially just create a custom event where when the event name equals GTM.click, that's what triggers my tag. I don't want to overwhelm you with that information, but that is a possible option. And I would not recommend to do that because you could always just use all clicks. If ever you're receiving a data layer event called purchase, then that could potentially be what you use to send your purchase event to Facebook if you don't want to use like a page URL or maybe like a button click or something like that. So just keep that in mind. I think that as you're more advanced with Google Tag Manager, you're actually probably going to prefer custom events compared to like a page URL or a button click. If you're just getting started, it is more advanced. So maybe you can again stick with just page URL and certain clicks. So I'm gonna remove this and I'm just gonna quickly talk about variables. So as we already saw, there's a bunch of already pre-configured variables here. You can always go and enable more. As again, you get more advanced, you might actually wanna go ahead and kind of create your own variables. So you can click that and then you have a lot of different options. And if you're familiar with custom JavaScript, you can do some pretty cool things. You can even like scrape the page to pull the user first name, last name, email, and then store that inside a variable so that when you're sending, let's say a purchase event to Facebook, you're also sending the user's first name or email. But again, this is more advanced, but those are possibilities. So that's kind of why I said, like, I think you should watch this video because you're going to be able to know what's possible and what's not. I hope you can kind of realize that like sky's the limit. So if you can think it, you can probably do it with Google Tag Manager. And that's why I really love the tool, because if you were to try to set all this up just using like the JavaScript on your, on your website, let's say you're trying to set up the Facebook pixel and you're only setting this up using the script that Facebook gives you and you're putting that directly on your website, it would be a little bit more complicated to do what I'm showing you in this video today. So again, this is why I really love Google Tag Manager, and I think it's definitely worth using for any businesses that wants to track anything, honestly. But guys, this is it in terms of the overview of Google Tag Manager and how to use it. Just don't forget that whenever you're making anything and you've reviewed it and you think it's good to go, submit it, because if you don't do that, then what you've did is not going to apply. And please tell me in the comment section, like, why are you using Google Tag Manager? If you're using it for Facebook or Google X4, let me know, and based on your guys' answer, then I can potentially make more videos on how to set this up for Google X4, Facebook, or any other platform that you're utilizing. So let me know in the comment section. But that is it for this video. Hopefully it was valuable. Bye for now.